Hello buddy, it's Murray, and today on this acrylic painting tutorial we're going to paint this gorgeous winter landscape. So let's get into it. So nice and easy tutorial today. You're going to need the following colours. They're titanium white, cad yellow, cad orange light, rose pink, cerulean blue, cobalt blue, iris purple, raw umber and ivory black. Now I've got a burnt sienna stained canvas that I've just used burnt sienna just to create an outline. We're going to have a nice snowy log cabin. We're going to have a little snowman. We're going to have some pine or Christmas trees either side of a cabin just to frame it. And we're going to have a gorgeous winter sunset in the middle for the viewer to look at. So if you'd like to pause the video and copy down the outline, please feel free to do so. So just like usual, we're going to start at the back and work on the sky and then work our way forward. So all I'm doing is just creating a little circle with some titanium white, and that is going to be our focus point, which is going to be our setting sun. We're going to take some pure cad yellow, just cad yellow, and just go around it and create a circle. And this is going to be the glow from our setting sun. So we're just creating a nice circle around our sun. So really nice and easy. And then we're going to create a darker sky. We're going to use this colour, which is cad orange light, which is like a pumpkin colour. We're going to add some cad yellow to it, and we're going to add literally a dot of raw umber brown. Now raw umber brown is really good for taking the vibrancy of the acrylic paints out and making the colours look more realistic. So if you just mix an equal amount of yellow and orange, and add a tiny bit of brown, you should get this lovely golden colour that we're going to use for our sunset. So all we're going to do is going to create the glow as the sun sets and goes down on the horizon. We're going to create this lovely warm glow with warm colours. So what we're doing, we're just going either side, and then we're just going to introduce a tiny bit of rose pink just to make it a little bit more redder. And this colour, which is called iris purple. Now if you haven't got iris purple, it's just purple and cobalt blue. So if you just mix a tiny bit of purple and cobalt blue, you should get that colour. But basically we're just trying to create a warm, hence we're using still pink, orange and yellow in the mix. Just a warm sort of burgundy sort of colour, like a pinkish colour. And all we're going to do is just create a nice blend into that orange. So these can be some clouds, some low forming clouds, or the skies, it just gets a little bit darker. Okay, so as we go up, we're going to get a little bit darker, but before we do that, we're just going to reflect that sunlight onto the snow. So we're going to have a sort of snowy plain, or it could be a frozen lake or something. So we're just going to use that colour just to reflect it. So all the ocean tutorials that we do, we normally reflect the colour onto the ocean surface, onto the water. So we're going to do the same with the snow. Now as we move up, we get a bit darker. So we're going to get some cerulean blue. We're going to add a tiny bit of yellow to make it a little bit green. Just a tiny bit, you don't need much. And some purple. And then we're just going to put plenty of white to make it really, really pastel. Now the reason we only put a tiny bit of yellow, we don't want to make it too green, but we want to create the sort of glow effect from the sun. So I'm just going to add a tiny bit of brown, just to again suck a bit of the colour out of it. So we should have like a silvery blue here, okay, because we've got plenty of white. And what we're going to do, we're just going to be careful, we're not going to go too much together with the previous colours we just put down. And we're just going to go along that line, and we're just going to create a nice sort of glowing blue. So this is going to be the sky that's gradually getting cooler, but it's still got a bit of heat from that sun. So you can see there's a big jump between the warm colours and now this cool pastel blue. So we'll blend it in a minute. But at first we just want to work on the blocking in and just get the colours right. So don't worry about blending just yet. So all we're going to do, we're just going to create this sort of mid colour, which is this glowing blue pastel sky. Just go around our clouds. Now don't worry, you don't have to paint your canvas burnt sienna. I just do because it makes it easier so I can see where I need to thicken up the paint and give my paint a second coat. Because sometimes when you paint with acrylics, they're very water based. One coat, as you can see, you still see a bit of the underpainting underneath. So it just shows you where you need to rework areas and make it look less scruffy. So that's why I always paint it burnt sienna. But as I say, if you want to paint on a white canvas, feel free to do so. So all we're just doing the same trick. We're just mirroring the sky look onto the snow. So think of a mirror. Just slightly blending it here. As I say, I don't really want to go the full hog. We're going to put the clouds on top. So I'm just lightly blending it, just a tad. And then while I've got that colour, I'm just going to paint the top of this snowy roof. So if you think, as I keep saying to you with all the tutorials, when we paint the oceans and things, just think of a mirror. So by using the colours in your sky on the bottom of your painting for things like snow or terrain or water, because they're the same colour, they'll match. And then it's much easier to create realism because all your colours match. So at the beginning of a painting, when you're blocking things in, if you try to mix quite a lot of paint, so we're going to have this nice reflection here onto the sun where this light blue is reflecting. So if you have quite a lot of paint, you can use it over and over again at the beginning of the painting, and all your colours are going to match. So we've got all the warm colours on the left and all the cool colours on the right. So because we want to create more coolness, we're going up in the sky and we want to frame our painting. We're going to use these cool colours at the top here. We're going to use cerulean blue, cobalt blue and Irish purple. We're going to mix some white to make it more pastel. I'm going to add a tiny bit more cerulean blue just to make it more blue. And a tiny bit more purple just to make it a little bit grayer. And we should get this nice cool blue because it's got purple in it. It makes it very nice and cool. And all we're going to do, we're going to frame our composition, frame our painting by darkening up the corners. So by darkening up the corners and the bottom of your painting, like the edge, see this bottom edge, and the same we're going to do at the top. What it does is it frames your painting and it makes the viewer look down the middle. So by having dark corners, we can get the viewer to look straight towards our sunset. So we're just going to put this corner is going to be a bit more in the shade, and obviously that corner is going to be in the shade because that big snowy cabin is going to be creating a shadow. And then at the top of our painting, as I say, we want to frame her. We're just going to colour her with this nice cool blue. So let's do this big gap here. So as I say, when you paint on a burnt sienna canvas, all I've done is I've just stained it with a tiny bit of paint so it looks like a tea colour. I don't remember when you were at school and you had to create something that looked old and used to stain like newspaper or something with tea and it would look like it was dated. Well, it's the same sort of effect, you just need a really light coat of it. But all it does is it just helps you. You can see with the lighter colour underneath this blue, there's bits of the canvas showing through. Because you haven't got enough paint, look, I'm running out of paint here. It's a bit streaky. So by letting your work dry and using the hairdryer and just going over the top, when you put a second coat of paint, not only does the paint look 10 times more vibrant, it just looks much more professional, less scruffy. So look, we've got this nice blocked in painting. And we're just going to get a little bit more white and a little bit more cerulean blue just to lighten her up. And we're just going to bridge these two areas. So where that really sort of greeny blue with a hint of yellow and the dark blue, because there's a big jump, we're just going to create a little bit of a bridge just so our transitions look a bit seamless. So we haven't got this horrible jump in colour. And just blending it here where the light sort of shines on that ridge. And we're going to do the same in the sky. So we're just going to get some of that blue. We'll just do a little bit blending here. Just so not so much of a jump. And we'll do the same in the sky. So just by using this lighter blue, because it's got a bit more white, we can just bridge these two areas together and it just looks like it's melting away into the distance. So as I say, give your work a dry if it's a bit scruffy. I'm just going to fast forward this a little bit, but all I'm doing, I'm just adding a second layer of paint. So hence the fact I'm fast forwarding it, so you don't have to sit here for 5 minutes while I do that. So all I'm doing, look, it just looks so much more vibrant. Look at the top of the painting. It looks so much better just from giving it a second coat of paint. So if your work at home is looking a bit scruffy, pause the video, take your time, and try to get all those horrible brush strokes out your work, and just give it a second coat of paint, and you'll notice how much more brighter and pretty it looks just from taking the effort. I know on YouTube, everyone, or especially in our world now, everyone wants everything in an instant. But if you want to be a master of something, you've got to put in the work. And being the master of your craft sometimes means slowing down, not trying to keep up with the Joneses, going at your own pace and trying to do your best work. So all I'm doing the exact same colours just over the top, but now it looks so much better and just pops more. It just looks more natural. So look, I put the speed back down. So we've got this nice dry painting. I've dried it with a hairdryer. So now we're going to work on all the clouds. So I'm just going to put my sun back in with some titanium white. And we're going to start working on all the clouds and all the transitions. Now the reason I've dried my painting is because we're going to use some warm colours here at the bottom. I don't want that mixing with the blue and creating green. So dry your work at stages in the tutorial. And again, if you dry your work and you make a mistake, you've got this lovely painting already underneath. And all you can do is just use a baby wipe or a wet cloth and you can just wipe over your mistake. So it's a good insurance policy to just take your time and just dry your work in stages in the tutorial. So I'm going to mix some yellow and orange. We've got our cad yellow around the sun. I'm just going to mix some yellow and orange together to create this nice pastel peach colour. And I'm just going to create a nice warm glow. So just like the background sky, by giving it 2 coats of paint, we can make even these highlights look much more vibrant. And we really want to create heat. So we're going to use this lovely cad orange light. And now we're going to add a tiny bit of the purple and pink just to make a sort of nice tiny dot of brown and a little bit of white just to make it pastel. Just to make sort of a tanny colour. If you combine orange and purple, you get a nice sort of brown. And if you add a little bit of white and pink to it, it just warms it up and makes it a little bit more burgundy, a little bit more redder. So all we're doing, we're just creating some dark sort of shadows of clouds, but these clouds aren't so harsh because they're right near the sun. So as I say, look, all this background is dry. If I zoom in for you, so now that we're going over this light blue, it doesn't mix. We're not getting a horrible blur of different colours. Because the canvas is dry, it's so much easier to go over the top, look, and get nice vibrant highlights rather than mixing. So last week we did an oil painting tutorial, didn't we? And as I say, like, acrylics are so much easier because you couldn't do this with oils. If this was still wet and we were trying to mix the colours, it would just all blur together. You'd have to paint it in stages. So acrylics are fantastic for beginners. We're just going to add a little bit more purple to the mix to make it a little bit more grayer and darker. So they're much more forgiving and easier. But they're, as I say, sometimes you have to go over the paint twice to make them look as vibrant as oils. Because oils, being that they're oil, their texture has nice sheen and they're brighter. So if you want that same effect with acrylics, just go over it twice. So all we're doing on this principle, we're just getting darker as we move away from the sun. So by adding that cool purple, so it's cobalt blue and purple if you haven't got it at home, to the mix, all we're doing is we're just making the clouds look like they're getting more silhouetted and darker as they move away from the heat source. So if you imagine that sun is really, really hot like a candle, and these clouds are getting less sunlight, so they're more silhouetted and darker. So it's the same principle as the sky, You want warm things around the sun and cool things away from it. So just like the background sky, we want to match that with the clouds. So I'm just creating a nice glow and this darker colour underneath. Let's have it going over here. So as we go up, we're just going to get a little bit darker. So we're adding more of this iris purple. But it's still got some of that orange and yellow in it, so it's still quite warm. And all we're going to do, we're just going to block in these big clouds here. Now with clouds, an easy way to paint clouds is to go sort of across the canvas, excuse me, at the bottom of the horizon. So you see around the sun, they're all pretty flat. But then as you go up into the sky, make them more diagonal and go in towards the corner. So can you see this one? And they're more flat. They just go and sort of look across the canvas, sort of horizontally. But then as you move up, if we add more purple to get even darker. So we're just getting cooler as we move up. Yeah, if you go up, as you go up, see they're going across. But then let's start going more diagonally as we go up. And what that does is it kind of creates a sort of globe effect where it looks like the earth is round. So it looks like they're going round in the sky. It's a little trick. So look, we're going to have ones going across at the bottom of the horizon. So let's have some little breakaway ones. So all I'm doing, I'm just using the same colour and I'm just using a little bit of a smaller brush and just creating little dots. So these are all the parts of the clouds that have broken away. And by just pushing down onto the canvas, you can make them look a bit more marshmallow. So just by pushing harder into the canvas. So look, we're going to add even more purple. We're going to add some brown now, just to make it more grey. So purple, a dot of black, just a dot, like a pinprick. And we're just going to get even cooler. And as I say, we're getting more diagonal as we go up into the painting. So by just using more purple, we're just getting cooler. So you can see it's a lot more cool as we go up. So just like the blue in the background, the clouds are transitioning from hot to cold. So a lot of realism in painting is the colour. So if you work on your colour mixing and just try to have your hots one side, so we're going to add even more purple and brown now, we're getting cooler and cooler and greyer and greyer. So if you have your hots on one side and your cools on the other side, and then you can hotten parts of the painting and make them more highlighted for areas that are in the sun and getting heat, and you can cool them down and make them more shadow-like for areas that are in the shade. So it's an easy little trick. So we're just making these clouds a bit more silhouetted, a bit darker. We're not using black so much because we don't want to have too dark silhouettes, because dark colours bring things forward. We want to push this sky back, hence the fact we're not making them too dark. Okay, so if you imagine, look, that's my hand as a cloud. The bottom part would be getting the light and the top part would be more in the shade. So it's the same principle with these clouds. If you make the bottom part more lighter in colour and the top part look a bit darker, it looks like the base of that cloud is getting the sunlight and the top is more in the shade. So again, same principle. Look, these clouds we're just making darker and more diagonal as we move into the top of the painting. And now we've got our dark corners. It should frame her very nicely. So our sunset is starting to take effect. Our sunset landscape. So let's just get some more paint. Just finish the top. There we go. Just block her in. The good thing as well, you can always change the shape of your clouds. I'll show you in a minute, by adding sky holes in the clouds with the background sky colour. So we'll do that in a minute, but we just want to work on our colours first. So we're going to have a few little breakaway ones. Now we've blocked her in. So just here, we're going to create some highlights. But we're just going to get some brown, purple, dot of black, and some cobalt blue. Sorry it's a bit off screen, but it's just purple, brown, cobalt blue, and a dot of black. And we're just going to make an even darker colour. I'll show you in a minute when my palette comes down. So just a tad darker because it's got a dot of black and some cobalt blue. But if you imagine, as I was just saying, these top corners, these are going to be really, really dark. They're almost going to be silhouetted. But we don't want to use too much black to overwhelm the painting and bring these clouds forward. So we're just going over the very top of the cloud and leaving the base to look like that's more in the sunlight. So same principle over and over again. We're just getting darker. So there's the colour. It's just a dark sort of bluey grey. We're just going to have some little breakaway ones going diagonally towards the corners. We could have some up here, couldn't we? Look, same principle. Look, just even though they're smaller, they're still going like diagonally. And then it's starting to look real. Look how easy this is. So again, same principle. Look, we're just having some breaking away. And by just going around the edges and pushing hard against the canvas, we can just fluff up some of the corners and the edges just to make the clouds look more whispery. So take your time. If you want to pause the video, pause the video. You're painting. Obviously we paint these in about an hour, but if you want to go a lot slower, please take your time. Let's have a few little ones over here. Right, so our clouds are all blocked in. So we're going to add some highlights. So we're going to get some cad orange light and plenty of white to make it nice and pastel. So cad orange light and plenty of white. And then we're going to get a tiny bit of yellow just to warm her up, to make her a bit more golden, sort of a peach colour. And then we're going to get loads and loads of white again. So loads of titanium white. And this time we're just going to add a little bit of cad yellow. And we're going to make it almost a luminous yellow. Sort of a really bright yellow, okay? So we've got two highlights. So we're going to take the peachy orangey one first. And we're just going to start creating some highlights on our clouds. So where the sunlight hits the clouds, it creates these really, really sharp, bright highlights that almost look luminous. So by using really pastel colours, we can emphasize these on the clouds, and we can also sort of join the area where all this at the bottom is really, really hot, and obviously we've got a blue sky. By going round the edges, look, just going round the edges and imagining, just like I did with my hand, that the base of these clouds would be getting all the heat. So just by colouring them in at the bottom, we've got that nice dark edge at the top, and we've got this lovely highlight, look, a lovely highlight on the bottom. So all we're doing, look, we're creating little sky holes, we're just poking little holes, and we're just thinking, where would the sunlight be coming up from the bottom and making the base of these clouds nice and warm. So by leaving little gaps, look, we're just leaving little gaps, it creates texture. Makes it look like the clouds, not just one shape. Sort of gives it texture. So just gently push against the canvas, look, and you can just sort of colour in areas. If you want to soften it up, just ease up on the pressure. So we're just making it nice and warm. So all these highlights. And then we should be joining these two areas together now, look. So we're just going to do the same over here. We're just going to warm it up. Try to make it not so much a jump between the hots and the colds. So I'm just shading over the top. I've got a little bit of paint and I'm just glazing over the top just to give it a little bit of an orange tint, a bit of a glow. So it just looks like that sun is beautiful and setting, but it's just creating that sort of heat as she goes down. So as I say, if you have a dry canvas, it's so much easier just to go over the top and colour areas in. Now we're going to get this sort of luminous yellow now, and we're going to get our fine liner. So we've just swapped a small brush. And all we're going to do is go around the clouds and give it an outline on the base of them. So on the underside of them, we're just going to create this really sharp outline. So we're using almost, it's not pure white, it's got a little hint of yellow. And because of that, it gives it a real sort of highly luminous sort of appeal. You could, if you want to, use luminous yellow if you have luminous yellow and just add a little bit of white. That would do the same effect. Now excuse my phone, I was filming for a YouTube short here. YouTube shorts are fantastic, they're the new thing on YouTube. So I was just filming using my phone because they're all upright. So if you have a YouTube channel at home, why not try to do some shorts as well? I'm going to do a few more for you guys at home, because they're a really good way for people to see a quick version of your paintings and then maybe come and then watch the big tutorial. So they're a good way to show people your work very quickly, and it's fun. The great thing about social media is it's really good for showing off your artwork. I'm going to do lots of videos next year on how to be a whiz on social media with your paintings. So we'll do that next year. So look, all I'm doing, I'm just outlining some of these clouds. If you imagine the sky is the majority of this painting, it's 2/3 of this painting, so that's why we're going to spend so long doing it, because it's the main thing the viewer's looking at. But by taking your time and working out all these principles, you can keep applying them as you go forward onto your own work. So we're just doing the same thing over and over again, creating these really harsh highlights, just where that sunlight is blaring on these clouds. So let's have some little breakaway ones that are really bright, getting almost bleached by the sun. And with that really cool blue at the top, it really makes them pop. So all I'm doing, I'm just outlining them. I'm just trying to work out where the sun would be peeking through. And as I say, you can poke these little sky holes. So you can make little holes look in your clouds. And that just again makes them look more realistic, and you can change the shape. So look, if I don't like the shape, I can just put little holes in it and make it look like the sunlight is beaming through it. So let's outline this one. Now again, with the highlights, if they look super vibrant at first, but then they dry a little bit flat, that's the unfortunate thing with acrylics, just go over them again. So if your highlights, like when we're laying the paint, look how bright they look, but can you see the ones at the bottom? They're already starting to look more flat and you're not noticing them as much. Because what they're doing is, because they're water based, they're picking up the blue that's underneath. So if you ever get highlights that really pop at first and then look a bit boring and a bit flat, just go over the top. So what we're doing now, we're just swapping back to that pastel orange, and we're just doing the same principle. Look, we're just outlining the clouds and creating little breakaway ones with the highlights. Because we're going up in the sky, it's getting a little bit cooler. We're using the pastel orange, and again, all our transitions should match, and it should look really hyper realistic because the highlights are even getting cooler as they move away from that light source. And the same principle, look, we're just poking the holes, create the little shapes. And it should blend really nicely with the yellow highlights, and you shouldn't even notice the change in colour. So I'm just going to get some yellow and some cad orange light just to make it more gold. And just around the sun, I'm just going to make her pop more. I'm just going to make the highlights go a bit more vibrant by giving it a second coat of paint. So this is what I keep saying to you. The reason it looks so real at the end is simply for the fact that I take my time and I go over things twice. And if you think we're painting these paintings in an hour, what is an hour of your life? It's not long at all, is it? So as I say, rather than being impatient and fast forwarding, you'll never get the same result as someone who takes their time. So it's like a gym. If I go to the gym and I spend 5 minutes in there, I'm never going to get ripped and get a six-pack, am I? So it's the same principle with anything you want to master. If you want to be the best at something, take your time. Do each area properly. So I'm using this yellow and orange, and I'm just going over some of the bottom of these clouds again to give it a nice warm glow. So it looks like that sun, look, is going right up into the clouds, into the light. So I'm just warming all this area up. And then if we've done one side, we're just going to do the other side just to make it all nice and symmetrical. So there we go. Easy peasy, all done. So we're going to make some of the sky colour at the top of the painting. So we're going to get some cerulean blue, some cobalt blue and some purple. And we're just going to mix that all together. And then we're going to add some white just to make it more pastel. And then we're just going to add a little bit more white. I think it's a bit too dark. Let's add a little bit more cerulean blue. We're just trying to match up the previous colour that we had for the top of the painting for the sky. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to use a fine liner and I'm just going to poke some holes in the clouds. So the great thing about acrylics, because they're water based, they dry really quick, and you can do this technique where you can just add little holes and you can change the shape of your clouds to make them look more realistic. So it's a little easy technique. We've done this lots in all the other tutorials, so it's a great one if you want to create realism in clouds. Once you've done the core colours and we've blocked it all in, we've done our highlights and bits, we can always change the shape of them and add a little bit more sky to make them look more realistic. So you can do this on any clouds, you don't have to have a sunset, you can do this on any technique. You just want to mix some of the sky colour and just poke little holes in the clouds just to change the shape and make them look more realistic. So let's have a few just coming down here, some at the top. And it's totally up to you. You don't have to copy the picture exactly. You can do as many as you want. I'm just going to have some up the top here. There we go. So that looks really realistic, and just where I've gone over the highlights when I was warming things up with that yellow and orange, I'm just going to put them back in. So again, as I say, with acrylics, when you change something or you let it dry, sometimes it takes a bit of the paint from underneath and it's not as vibrant, it's not as bright. So if you want your highlights to really, really pop, just dry your work and go over them with the same colour. So again, I know it's a bit repetitive and I know it's a bit long in the tooth, but it does really, really work. And especially here, look, above the sun, this is going to be the most radiant, this is going to get the most hardcore sort of light from that light source. And when we put our snowmen and our barn in, we want people to look past it into that sunset. So imagine you were just standing here looking outwards. That's what we want to sort of create. And again, look, you can do the poking holes technique, just like we did with the blue. If you want to do that with this colour, So I'm just making some really harsh highlights just up here. Could just have some on this underneath bit. So guys, don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We're coming up to 10,000 subscribers here on YouTube, which is amazing. At the beginning of the year, I had to think about 4,500 and I wanted to double it. So we've done more than that. So I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who's liked and subscribed to the channel. It's really, really hard with anything when you first start. Trying to grow and be found on YouTube. So thank you so much for liking and subscribing and promoting the channel. And don't forget, if you're painting along at home, don't forget to tag me at Stewart Paintings with your versions of the tutorials, so we can shout them out on Facebook and Instagram and here on YouTube. So we've got this lovely focus point now, and we've got this amazing sky. So if you want, as I say, to make that highlight colour, it's just yellow and white. I've got it pre-mixed here because I'm lazy. And all I'm going to do, I'm just going to go around the circle of my sun just to make it have a bit more glow with that bright yellow and white. And then while we've got that colour, I'm just going to actually put some white in. Let me just create my sun just to make it look more vibrant. While we've got that colour, let's put some highlights on the snow. So we've got our snowman and we've got that sunlight coming down. So let's get some of the orange, yellow and white that we mixed up earlier. I think mine's a bit dry, so let's just put some in. So it was cad orange light, lots of white and a dot of yellow. I'm not going to put a dot of yellow, I'm just going to have cad orange and some white. And all I'm going to do, if you imagine the sun is hitting that right hand corner of the snowman, so that area is going to be nice and warm. So if we just warm it up with some of that orange, and then this ridge as well will be getting lots of sunlight because that sun would sort of be beaming down onto it. So again, just look, just having a contrast between the cool colours and the warm colours, we can create what's in the light and what's in the shade. So if you imagine to the right hand corner, that's going to be much more in the shade because that big barn is going to be blocking it. So we don't want to colour that. It's more here in the middle where the sun is coming down. So all I'm doing, I'm just using a fine liner, just a small brush, and I'm just glazing over the top. This is all dry. And I'm going to get some of that white and yellow. And all I'm going to do is, just like the highlights in the clouds, I'm just going to make this ridge just really, really sharp, because that would be getting bleached with all the sunlight. And the same here, we just add some texture just so it looks really nice. And we can put some on our snowman, why not? So it all matches just like the sky. And then we're going to put some on this ridge. We're going to have a snowy rooftop, but we don't want to just use white because it will look really weird and cartoony. So we're going to use this really bright yellow and white, and we're just going to make it really, really bright, this lovely edge, because that's getting all the sunlight. And we're just going to put a little bit on the actual barn itself. And then we're going to get our just a little bit of cad yellow, and we're going to create like a shimmer on the snow. So this could be just loads of snow in the background, or it could be a frozen lake. We're just going to get cad yellow, and we're going to do a bit like what we do with water. We're going to create like a shimmer coming down. So I'm just going to get some cad orange and some yellow, just make a bit more of a golden colour, just like the sky. So what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to mirror the colours in the sunset onto this snow below it. So it just looks like a mirror basically. So I'm just warming up this area. I've got hardly any paint on my brush. I'm just glazing over this dry canvas and just scraping it against the canvas. And again, just putting some cad yellow back in. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to create really, really bright under the sun, and then a bit more darker either side of it with the orange. Hence, it matches the sky. So you've got this really, really bright bit, and then we're just going to get pure titanium white now, and we're just going to come down and create a shimmer on this snow. So just like when we paint an ocean. So when you've done lots of sunsets with me over an ocean, it's the same principle. It's like this lovely shimmer you get, where it looks like the light is basically gleaming down onto the floor. So there we go, we just got to glaze that area. And then let's add a tiny bit of pink, just to hotten her up. Just a tiny bit of orange and pink, and a tiny bit of brown, just to take a bit of the colour out. So again, just like a bit like what we did with the clouds, but it's just got a little bit more pink, it's got a little less brown. And we're just on this corner, as it sort of fades off into the barn, and the outside, we're just going to put like a nice pinky glow. So think of a colour wheel, you go from like white to yellow to orange to like pinky reds, and then you get cooler. So all we're doing, we're just trying to copy that principle. So I'm just glazing over the top with this nice pink. So by using a soft bristle brush, like a blender brush, it makes your life a lot easier. So I'm just using a big brush with a rounded edge, but it's really, really soft to touch. So it's really easy when you're just going across the canvas. You can just sort of stroke the canvas, and the sort of chalky bit of the paint comes off. So just here, we're going to use some of that dark blue that we mixed up earlier for the sky, and that shadow colour. And we're going to do the opposite. So if you think one side is in the light, the other side, think of yin and yang, is in the dark. So what we're going to do, we're just going to use this cool blue to create a shadow. And we're going to use a little bit for that underneath his hat. Give him a hat, why not? Make him cool. So we're just going to create a little bit of shadow, and then we're just going to have that darker blue just have a little shadow. If the sun is behind him, it's going to catch a little bit of shadow underneath him. And then we could use that. We're going to put a little fence, and just before I put it in, I'm just going to put the shadow where I've got that colour mixed. I'm just going to come down, just create some little fence posts, some little shadows. And then we're going to have a little fence going across. This could be a nice little wooden fence. This could be a little farm or something, couldn't it? So all we're doing, we're just using that colour. Now I'm going to have a big sort of Christmas tree, a big pine tree in this corner, just to frame the composition. So I'm just going to darken it up. The other reason I want to darken the left hand corner is because I'm going to sign it just here. So I want to always sign my work in white. So always darken up the corner. And I'm going to have a little bit of shadow just here from the barn. So I'm just going to have a little rough shape of a shadow where the barn's cast in a shadow. And again, I'm just going to darken up the corner just off camera. So again, it draws you to the middle. And just here, I'm just going to use some white. I'm just going to poke in some sunlight. You'll see when I move my chubby hand in a minute. I'm just poking in some sunlight. I'm just using white, titanium white over the top, and what that does is it just makes a lighter blue. There we go. And then I'm just going to add a teeny tiny bit of yellow to the mix, just so it matches. It'll go like a yellowy blue, and it'll just look like that area is a bit more in the sun, and against that dark blue, which is more in the shade. There we go. Just gonna smudge it with my finger, just so it blends a little bit nicer. So let's just blend it a little bit while it's all still wet, just so it's not so harsh. There we go. So I'm going to get some cobalt blue, which is a lot cooler, and some brown, and a little bit of purple. So cobalt blue mainly, a little bit of brown just to make it more grey, and a little bit of purple just to make it nice and cool. Tiny bit of white, and we're just going to create a nice sort of shadow colour. We're not going to use black just yet. We're just going to put this dark sort of grey blue. It's a bit like the colour at the top of our clouds. And we're going to paint our snowman's hat in. So I'm just using a fine liner just so I can get quite little details. Let's put some coal eyes and little mouth. And then let's paint his scarf. Let's give him a scarf and some buttons so he can have some little coal buttons. So he's nice and cute. And then let's give him some arms. It could be some twig arms, couldn't they? So again, using a really small bristle brush makes your life so much easier to do this sort of fine detail, like his arms and his little eyes and things. Let's give him a big scarf. I never understand why people put a scarf on a snowman. It's not like he's not cold. It's a bizarre one, isn't it? So we're going to put a scarf on. Here we go. Now, by using this colour, it's not quite silhouetted. It's still getting a bit of sunlight. And then what we'll do is we'll put some dark shadows on it afterwards. But by using this darker blue, I'm just going to give a really fine edge just here. And I'm going to swap over to a really thin brush. I'm going to use the same colour. I'm going to paint in the fence posts with this colour. So being that it's still got some blue in it, it's still pushing it back into the distance a little bit. Because black brings things really, really close to the viewer. So by just having a little bit more of this cobalt blue, it just pushes it back. And again, look, this brush makes my life so much easier because it's so thin. It's really easy to draw spindly straight things like branches. It's perfect for trees. And it's really, really easy for doing fine detail. Look, really sharp edges because the bristles are so elongated, they're so long and thin. It makes your life really, really easy. And then just put some shadows and some detail. We're going to go across. I forgot to press record. What a professional. But all we're going to do, look, we're just going to go across and we're just going to create a line. And as I say, this brush makes it so much easier. And then I'm just going to use the really thin edge just to give it a little bit of definition. So where the snow just meets. Oh, this is starting to look really cool. And I'm just going to get a load of cobalt blue and some brown. So cobalt blue and raw umber brown to create this really nice dark colour. So there we go. I'm going to use a flat-headed brush and I'm just going to create a straight line. So again, this brush is really, really good because it's got a really flat edge. And all I'm going to do is create a tree trunk. So if you can, try to make the very top a little bit thinner than the bottom. So it's always wider in the bottom than it is at the top. And all we're going to do, we're just going to come... Don't worry if they're not perfectly straight. Trees are quite wonky. But you just want to come down with this flat edge of the brush. And the great thing is, as I say, if you've been drying your work before you attempt this, if you make a mistake, you can just wipe it away. So if you ever get worried or nervous at home when you're painting along at home, just dry your work before you use any of these dark colours. And then if anything goes wrong, you can just wipe it away. So we're going to swap to a fan brush. Now a fan brush just looks like a fan. And all we're going to do is just load up that nice dark blue. And we're just going to create the equivalent of Christmas trees or pine trees. So all we do is we go quite thin at the top and then we come out wider either side as we move down. So can you see I'm coming out wider? Look, I'm coming out wider than the previous one above it. And I'm just getting wider and wider as I come out, and I'm leaving little gaps as I move down. So we've got a nice wide, it's like me, it's wider at the bottom than it is at the top. So there we go. and we can just use those bristles. And again, this brush, all these brushes you can I've put links in the description boxes. All these brushes, you can go to any art shop and buy them. They make your life so much easier. So we're just going really, really thin at the top, and we're just coming out wider as we come down, and we just get wider as we come towards the bottom of the tree, and we're just leaving little gaps so the orange of the background sky and things can shine through. So what we're doing, we're laying the shadow colour just like we did with the clouds, and then we'll add some snowy highlights over the top and make them look all nice and Christmassy. So we've got to lay the dark on first before the highlights can shine. So look, all we're doing, we're just wider at the bottom and thinner at the top. It's kind of like a triangle. And then let's do some here in the background. It could be poking above the cabin or the barn or wherever it is. So there we go, just the same principle. There we go. Now we're going to get lots of white, and we're just going to add that to make a snow colour. Now again, if you want to dry your work before you attempt this, you can dry your work, and then this white mix that we've just mixed, when you lay it on top, it won't mix with the darker blue. I'm a pro, so I'm just going straight into it. But if you don't want them to mix, you can just dry your work and then put this over the top. But it's the same principle. We're just going wider as we come down. We're leaving little gaps so that dark blue shines through. And look at this. It looks like snow, if I zoom in for you, is on these lovely Christmas trees. So look, we're just using this really nice spiky fan brush. And we're just leaving lots of the dark blue to shine through, and we're just pushing down with the edge of that brush, and it looks like a snowy texture. How easy was that? And we give it all nice highlights. I'm going to do the same in the background. Look at that. And then look, you can go back to your really thin brush and you can make the tops, and if you've gone a bit wonky like me, you can just give it some more bristles. You can use a fan brush as well, but I just find, look, this brush is so thin, it's really easy to make nice long sort of tree trunks, like the stem of the tree. So look, you can just create a really sharp line, look. And if you want to add some dark back into the tree, you can even add a tiny bit of black, just a tiny bit to the mix. Just darken it up, because this bit is going to be really in the shade. So if you want to add a tiny bit of black, just here like on the trunk and stuff, just to really make it silhouetted, help yourself. So there we go, we're just putting some detail in. And let's add a tiny bit of black to the mix, and let's just put a darker shade on this left hand side. So we've got the blue getting the heat, and then just on the edge of this scarf and underneath we've got it almost silhouetted. The same on the buttons. So as I say, this brush is so precise, it's really, really easy to do fine detail with it. And we're going to do the same on this tree. So I'm just going to make the left hand side, because the light's coming from the right, a little bit darker. So again, just making some of those bumps and bristles look a bit darker, and the tree trunk, just to make her look a bit more silhouetted. And again, let's just give the top bit a little bit more sharpness. And then you can even do it on the fence posts. Look, you can give it a dark edge. So think of what we did with the snowman, where we've got one edge is in the light and one edge is in the dark. You can even do this by adding a little bit more black. So all these little finishing touches Just really easy, but they're all common sense. If you have one edge that's dark, the other edge is going to be light. Let's just make his eyes look a bit bigger. His little smiley face. He looks happy. There we go. Just makes a little bit more definition. So as I say, with all the tutorials, you can go as detailed as you want. A lot of these ones are out of my imagination, so I haven't really got a reference photo. I just sort of make it up as I go along. So that looks really, really cool. So we're going to get some brown and cobalt blue again to make our dark colour. And we're just going to block in again with another flat brush this edge. Now this edge is going to be really silhouetted because this has got its back to the sun. And what I've done deliberately, I've got my brush and I've just got a little bit more water on it because I'm trying to make it look texturized like wood. So by just adding a little bit more water to your brush, you can make it deliberately streaky. So what we would try not to get in the background sky at the beginning, we're actually going to go for, because we're going to make it look like wood. So look, by using a flat brush and just scraping against it, I can create little grooves and it looks like panels of wood. How easy is that? So that's a little trick for you if you ever want to paint wood. So we're going to have the dark colour on this side, on the right, because this area is going to be a little bit in the shade. But as it moves towards the left, that blaring sun's going to be starting to hit it. So again, look, we've got quite a watery texture. And this area is going to be a little bit more in the shade because that big snow is covering it up. So we're just going to create a nice watery triangle there. And then we're just going to get loads of this cad orange light and add it to the mix to make it more hot. And we're just going to add some heat. And again, just like we did with the snow, just like we did with the sky, it's going to look like one side's in the light and one side's in the shade. So let's get more orange, just hotten her up. Let's get it nice and scorchio. There we go. So it looks like glaring sunlight. It's just melting onto that corner. We just blend it all together. There we go. Just by scraping down and going across, we can just create the illusion of some wood. And then I'm just going to get some white and orange, just to make a pastel orange. Still using the flat brush. And I'm just going to put back in that nice edge of my snow. Just wipe away that corner, which I just got. And the same on the underneath. So this could be just a nice bit of highlights. And just on the very tip, this area is going to be getting some sunlight, so I'm just glazing over the top, just making it a little bit more orange. And then while I've got this colour, I'm just going to create some lines like panels in the wood. But I don't want them really prominent, so I'm just going to use my finger to smudge them. The same going across, so it just looks like grooves in the wood. Again, just smudging them just so they're really faint. And while we've got that colour, look, we're going to put some highlights in the snow. So this, just like the clouds, we're just going to go over them and just really make them pop. So this area is getting really bleached by that sunlight. And let's put some snowy footsteps in. So I'm just getting some of that dark colour that we used for the trees, but I think it's a bit too grey, so I'm just going to, I think I'm going to put some purple into it. So it's basically blue, purple and a little bit of brown, but I think my one was, I think my brush was a bit dirty. That looks a bit too dark. I think it's too black. So I'm just going to put a little bit of purple. So a bit like the same colour that we did the fence posts. So purple, cobalt blue, and a little bit of brown. You can add a tiny bit of white. I'm just going to go over these footprints and just make them less harsh. Let's have them going off. So a little kiddie has built a snowman and walked off. So it looks pretty. And then I'm just going to make, with that colour, I'm just going to make him a bit rounder. A bit fuller in the belly. So there we go. He's been eating his Christmas turkey. So I think he looks better now. He looks more round. And I'm just going to add a little bit of a shadow just coming off that sort of Christmas tree. And again, we want to sign it there. So I want it nice and dark. And I'm just going to wear his arms. It's a nice little reflection. Just a little bit here where that shed is in the shade. God, I've called it all different names. We've called it a cabin, a shed, a barn. Don't know what it is. A tool shed. Alright. Okay, so we're going to get some brown and some cobalt blue. And we're just going to make it slightly a bit darker. We're just going to create a door. So we'll just create a door and some windows. Now I'm a bit too close to this, but I think they looked incredibly wonky, yes. I must be drinking. So I'm just going to get some raw umber brown and my fine liner. I'm just going to neaten and straighten everything up a little bit. So again, just giving it a bit of a sharp outline. It's a bit comic-y, but we just want to have some clear definition in areas. And then let's just come across. God, that's wonky. Look how wonky that is. Wow, so let's just smudge that. I assure you, I haven't been drinking. I'm just not very good at painting straight lines. I don't know why. Hence, I always use these flat brushes and things because they make your life so much easier. There we go. So there's a door. That's kind of straight, isn't it? There we go. No one will know. Just smudge it a bit. And then let's just make some windows. There we go. And then let's just give this a little bit of a shadow where that snow is creating a bit of a shadow. Same here. I think that's a little bit too harsh. So I'm just going to smudge it with my finger just to take a bit of the harshness out. There we go. And I'm just going to put a little bit lighter here. I think I need some more orange. There we go. So just putting some of that bright cad orange light just to emphasize the heat there. There we go. Oh, that's looking so pretty. Excuse the light. It's really, really gloomy here in London. It's really, really dark and wet. It was snowing last week and it's all melted and it's just been raining every day. So excuse the light. So I've just mixed some blue and purple and a tiny bit of brown. And just like we did with the fence, I'm just using this fine liner just again to give it a nice sharp edge. Just so there's a bit of definition between the snowy roof and the sky. So you can use this. And the good thing is, because it's not black, it's not that noticeable. So just using a really fine brush just gives it some little added detail. The same just as the snow and the cabin is sort of divided. And you could use this just to go across and give it some panels now. Now we've got the colour in. So if you want to go up and down, just create some wood panels. And then I'm just going to go over the top just with some white. Now we've got everything in just to make her pop. Make our highlights look really, really professional. And then where I was smudging it with my finger, I'm just putting back in this really sharp ridge with the yellow and white. And the same on that corner, just so it really looks like it's in the sun. And then we're just going to use the same colour here, just on the snow, just to really emphasise it. Just so it really pops around those footprints. And just on his belly and his head, we're just going to give him a nice bright sort of gleam. He's in the sunlight. And I think she's pretty much finished. So I've signed her in the bottom left hand corner. So you've learnt how to do this beautiful winter sunset. So we've learned how to paint clouds, how to paint background sky, how to have highlights and shadows where you have the sunlight coming from underneath. You've learned how to poke holes in your clouds. We've got the light effect here on the snow and on the cabin. You've learned how to paint pine trees and a snowman and create this gorgeous winter Christmas lovely landscape painting. So I wish everyone a very happy holidays and very Merry Christmas if you celebrate it. Thank you so much for everyone, all the support. I'm hopefully going to do another video before New Year's, but I hope you all have a nice rest with your families, and please tag me at mshopaints with your versions and have a lovely time. See you soon guys, take care, bye.